Hello and welcome to Indianomics. We speak a great deal about the centre facing a financial crunch because of lower taxes. Today, let's look at the problem that the states are going to face. If you looked at the budget that was just presented 2 weeks back, the transfer to states in the budget estimate last year was 8.02 lakh crore, but actually what was transferred to states in the revised estimates is only 6.56 lakh crore. So now that's a fall of 1.7 trillion. Or 1.5 trillion rupees. Let's just look at the way in which the money was transferred. If money gets transferred quarter by quarter, month by month, the first 9 months itself saw 2.2% less transfer to states compared to FY19. But now if you looked at the math, the fall in the fourth quarter in terms of transfer to states will be 14% compared to the fourth quarter of FY19 because the kitty itself has gone down. So that's the fall. March in 2019, they got about 2.7 lakh crore, we are told, and these are ICRA estimates taken from the central government accounts. And this quarter, if you do the math, it's likely to be as bad as 1.7 lakh crore. That's a fairly severe crunch. I'll come to the states who are likely to feel the devolution more, but just a word more on what can happen next year. Next year, the revised estimates say that whereas this year it is 6.56 lakh crore transfer to states, next year it's going to be 7.8 lakh crore. But this projected growth of 19.5% depends on the centre getting a total tax revenue growth of 12%. And that 12% is under danger because this year's base itself is perhaps overstated. Centre needs 12%, but this year they have to get a base of 21.6 lakh crore, which they may not, going by the first 9 months of tax collection. So there is likely to be a danger even to this 7.8 lakh crore promised transfer next year. So this year less, next year a danger of getting less. So the states, this is another issue altogether. The devolution to these states, Karnataka, Kerala, Telangana, Andhra and Assam, they are going to lose because of the 15th Finance Commission's recommendations. Those recommendations are based on the 2011 census. Because of that, also they lose. So they get, separately, there are grants which are given. The tax is devolved. There are also special grants given by the centre. In the past 3 years, FY 17, 18 and 19, the budget promises one set of grants, but effectively it is less when the actuals actually happen. So we are looking at several things in terms of lower money for the states. The central kitty itself is smaller, so they will get less money. As well, the grants have been habitually lower than what was promised. To discuss what all this can mean to the states, I have with me an elite panel. I have with me Aditi Nayar, who has given us a lot of these numbers in her report. She's from ICRA. We have Yamini Aiyar, who's from the President Center of the Policy Research. And we have with us Haseeb Drabu, who is a former finance minister of J&K. Gentlemen, in a minute, we are also going to be joined by Isaac Thomas, the Finance Minister of Kerala. Gentlemen, that is Drabu, and ladies, thank you very much for joining me. Actually, Haseeb, let me start with you. Typically, how do states respond when you are supposed to get 10,000 crores and you end up getting only 5,000 crores in the last quarter? How will states respond to this?
Well, like centre will respond. I mean, basically, this is not the first time it's happened. In the pre-FRBM era, this was a regular thing. And the simplest administrative mechanism is you kind of postpone payments. And the axe falls on capital expenditure because you can't, stop revenue expenditure. So typically what happens is two things will happen. One, bills will pile up in the treasuries and capex but will be cut. Okay. It's also not as if there's a linearity to the expenditures that month after month things get spent. No, there's also a cyclicity to that, and what may also be a kind of good thing in some ways because there's a bunching of payments towards March in all treasuries. Okay. It's called the March madness when bills get paid off. Okay. So to that extent there actually will be some degree of sanity prevailing because you will have to actually now start looking closely at which bills they should start paying rather than kind of defray all kinds of expenses in March.
No, but that can be...
Really, I mean, that is the administrative part, which I think...
No, Drabu, actually, I'm a little worried if that's what they're going to do because there is a severe complaint from SMEs, MSMEs that payments are not happening from the government on time.
No,
And invariably they mean state governments are not.
It's not the first time, as I said, pre-FRBM, if you look at it,
Okay.
if you look at it, the entire slippage in the 90s was because centre never met its targets, and budgets are always made in states based on Bs, and REs have always been less than that.
Okay.
But today, I think the problem is much more severe. What you're looking at now in this quarter is a liquidity crisis for the states.
Yeah, exactly
But
my
what
point.
you're staring down in next year is a proper fiscal crisis. So you will actually face a liquidity problem in this quarter, which will graduate to a fiscal crisis next year, looking at not just the numbers, but the kind of award that has come from the 15 Finance Commission. So this is bad time for state finances, which have actually seen a good run over the last decade or so.
Okay, well, let me toss the same thing to Yamini Aiyar. Yamini, I mean, do you think that we are seeing a new high in terms of the gap that the state finance ministers are going to face this quarter? First, I'm interested in this quarter because it looks like there's going to be a steep cut. And I'm told Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal and Maharashtra will be the key casualties.
No, absolutely. I think, as Haseeb rightly says, we are staring at an unprecedented liquidity crisis that is likely to get to take us in towards a fiscal crisis. And as he rightly also says, what's particularly astonishing is that over the last 5 to 10 years, state finances actually have done relatively better. I would venture so far as to say they've done better than central government finances. And now, owing to the unpredictability, and also importantly, the central government reneging on compensation for GST, you're creating complete unpredictability in state finances, which is taking us into a very, very dangerous territory. I also wanted to point out one more thing in terms of the central government budget and how that's impacting state finances. As you know, a significant part of the devolution to states comes in the form of tied schemes, centrally sponsored schemes. It amounts to about 2% now of GDP for this year. And if you look closely at the releases of those schemes to states, ultimately it is states that implement it. And don't forget, after the 14th Finance Commission recommendations, the Ministry of Finance and the central government changed the fund sharing ratio. So states are paying more for these centrally sponsored schemes. And if you look at the release of these of money for these schemes, you're looking at releases in the range of about 30% for some schemes, 50% for others, up until November and December of 2019, for which we have data. So this delay of release of money is snowballing into delayed payments at the ground level, all the way down to the grassroots of expenditure. And that is going to further the crisis that we are going to confront at the start of the next FY.
Okay. Well, that's pretty serious, and I can recall Dr. Y.V. Reddy's book along with one of his friends, G.R. Reddy, where he says states spend their money and their officers to implement centrally sponsored schemes, and the money comes late even for that. So there was a bit of anger from the state's point of view. Aditi, first of all, thank you for all that rich...
And one of the interesting things...
Yeah, go ahead, Yamini.
Sorry, just wanted to add a very quick two things. One of the interesting things about a lot of the centrally sponsored schemes now is that they actually are used to pay wages for contract workers and grassroots workers that are employed by the government. So traditionally, you've seen delays in these payments, gaps of about 6 months. Now you're probably going to see even more delays, even in wage payments to salaried employees of the government, which I think is something that should worry us as well. And lastly, I wanted to point out that all of this is happening in an institutional vacuum. There is no central institutional space for states to engage with government of India, with the union government, to debate the consequences of this unpredictability and the liquidity crisis that states are beginning to face.
Yes,
and that politically is going to be a very big challenge.
Yes, again, to quote from Dr. Reddy's book, he said that he was hoping the Niti Aayog will fill in the shoes that were left empty by the Planning Commission. It may have had many ills, but this conversation could happen between centre and states there is an institutional vacuum, as you say. But I'm more worried about the impact on the economy, which both of you have brought out very well in terms of lack of salary payments to even contract workers, and of course capex cuts, as Haseeb points out. Aditi, first of all, thank you for your excellent report. What other consequences should we be prepared for? We have pretty much gone through all your data.
Thanks, Latha. So I'll just point out a couple of things. Why the central tax devolution has been cut so sharply between the BE and RE of FY20 is really for two separate reasons. One is that the FY 2019 provisional actuals were much lower than the FY19 RE. So ever since we saw the FY19 provisional numbers, we've been worried about that.
Okay.
And then on top of that, once the corporate tax rate was cut, ever since September, we've been highlighting that a huge part of that is going to be shared with the states, and therefore we've really got Aditi, a twofold concern.
Yeah, Aditi, I think the causes are known. I'm really worried about the consequences.
Now, this will flow into next year as well, Latha, because so now, let me just add that we, as you said already, we are already worried that the FY20 RE are also overstated.
Yes.
And therefore, we're going to get a downward adjustment in FY21 as well. So just to bring that point out. Now, 3-4 things. What we've seen as far as expenditure growth for the state governments already in Q3, I think they had some inkling that this problem was going to crop up in Q4. So we've already seen a slowdown in expenditure growth from the state governments.
Okay.
And as far as Q4 is concerned, maybe a little bit of a mitigating factor is that there is significant headroom which is left as compared to the budget estimates. So I have a couple of observations as far as state budgeting is concerned. First of all, expenditure budgets tend to be very far away from reality for some states. Budgeting is not done in a very accurate manner. The forecasting is not very fine-tuned, and therefore what we find is that in any case, no matter what happens in terms of the central transfers, year after year, states end up spending far less than what they would have initially budgeted. So that anyways leaves them headroom to cut expenditure in Q4 in case the revenues are not really up to the mark that they were expecting at the time of the budget estimates.
Actually,
the other thing,
Aditi,
I have a slightly different point of view. States
Aditi,
have
actually, Isaac Thomas
done
has
better than the center only because they're not allowed to borrow more.
Exactly. Yeah, I take your point. There is a compulsory acts on them, so they cannot renege like the center can. We have Isaac Thomas joining us, and he's found time from the Kerala Assembly, and therefore I'm stopping you, Aditi. Mr. Isaac Thomas, the Finance Minister of State of Kerala, is with us. Thank you very much, sir. We were just discussing that this devolution to states has fallen from the budgeted over 8 lakh crore to 6.5 lakh crore. I believe you are not seriously affected. Can you tell us, are you?
Yes, the implication is that normally towards the end of the financial year, you would be getting much bigger support than the normal monthly support in the tax central transfer. Now with this shortfall in the revenue, the opposite is going to happen. Say for the case of Kerala, we are expecting that our tax share, central share would decline at least by 2,000 crores, which is a big shortfall. So all states are going to face this shortfall. And this is primarily because of the larger concessions given to the corporate tax. In fact, no corporates were asking for the tax concession. And I don't know for what reason this was announced in this hurry, except other than the fact that perhaps a PM was there in states and he wanted to have a rally in the stock market while he was there, and therefore you give away 1.5 lakh crores of rupees, and forgetting that 42% of them belongs to the state.
Yeah, point taken. Well, actually, Mr. Thomas, what I heard was that Maharashtra, actually Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh and West Bengal are the biggest losers. In any case, how do states typically react to this? Do they even cut salaries as we are told?
Yeah, it can become very bad. Now there is a shortfall of central transfers. To the own tax revenues of states, there is also a significant shortfall. And in the case of states like Kerala, you have a strange situation where the borrowing, market borrowings are also cut. And the center also there is a shortfall, but center has other options. They can say have a greater dividend taken from the Reserve Bank, not a small amount, but nearly 2 lakh crores of rupees. They can decide to sell more assets and gather money, but states have no such option. So they can only reduce their expenditure. And in some states, I'm certain they'll be finding it difficult to pay their salaries here.
Oh, okay, so I wanted to ask you also, since I have your time for a little more, the 15th Finance Commission recommendations actually ensure that you lose more. Actually, Karnataka loses in absolute terms, but you are also one of the losing states because the census of 2011 is going to be considered and not 1971. What are your reactions to that?
Now, this is what we had predicted, that those states which are successfully restricted their population growth would be adversely affected. Now, all that we wanted was, well, finally when we demanded, we had negotiation, discussion with Finance Commission and so, all right, you want to now change the base year, you want to have greater devolution to more backward states, do that, but don't do it in a disruptive way, like absolute reduction in the devolution and so on. It will be disrupting the budget of these advanced states. Now, Finance Commission, I must say, has to a great extent listened to our grievance and paid attention to our apprehension. And therefore, they have provided something like 74,000 crores of rupees in their recommendations for those states who are facing revenue deficits even after the devolution, states like Kerala and so on. But unfortunately, the central government, though accepted the recommendation, has provided only 30,000 crores.
Gentlemen and ladies, just stay on with us. We have to take a quick break. We are back with more.